Howdy y'all. Back today with a response to a tag video from our friends Nick and Patrick, and that is ETA Nick and Luther Manning, and they would like to know what books have we purchased in 10 or more copies and why. Alright, well, I've got a stack of books here to show you, and it pretty much is short and sweet because my personal history of buying 10 or more copies of any book is kind of short and sweet. I mean, even within 45 years of collecting. Okay, there is a caveat here. I do not have 10 or more copies of any of these books anymore. I just dug through the entirety of the collection to dig out what I do have left. And I think Patrick was the one that said, and I think he was, kind of tongue-in-cheek saying, if you can't show us the 10 or more, it's not true. Well, I assure you, my friends, it's true. So, to start things off, the only comic book that I ever bought 10 or more right off the rack was this book, Daredevil number 182. I was just so wild about it. My friend, as I described in an older video, my friend Tom and I ran around for probably 2 weeks to every grocery store, convenience store, newsstand, or whatever, and I was buying up every copy of this thing that I could for no other reason than I just loved it so much. I was in, I do believe, my senior year of high school at the time, and just loved the damn thing. As you can see, I've got 4 copies here. It's all I was able to find. But I've sold and I've gifted a bunch over the years. The next category is the big one, really, and that was my Koch warehouse purchases, wholesale purchases back in the late 80s up to about 1990. I was buying them wholesale through the Comic Buyer's Guide, and my general rule of thumb was I would order a dozen copies of every book that I was ordering just to see how many I would get back. And in very few cases, I got a dozen copies back. Now, they were all beautiful, unopened warehouse, very fine denier mint or better copies. I have since gifted and sold the majority of them. But I'll show you a couple here that I am certain I got a full dozen copies of. Shadow number 1. If you haven't noticed already, I'm in a completely different room of the house, and I don't know how this is going to turn out, so, but y'all know me. I'm a one-take guy. Call number 11. Good God. Yes. Yeah, you got that right. And Tarzan 207. I got a full dozen copies, very fine or better, of each of these, and these are the ones that I still have in my collection. I also got a full dozen copies, I remember, of Bernie Wrightson's Swamp Thing, number 8, 9, and 10. I ordered all of them wholesale, a dozen copies apiece, and as they came into the run, I got more copies of each. Like number 1, I got 3 copies. Number 2, I got 3 copies. Number 3, I got 4 copies. You know, number 4, I got 5 copies, and so on and so forth. They built in number the later into the 10-issue run I got. And yes, Patrick, I wish I had one of those beautiful near mint number 9s for you, but I sold them many years ago on eBay, my early years of eBay, and got really nothing for them. You'll be happy to know, right? Yeah. 2 more here. And these, anyone who's been watching my videos for any time, these will come as no surprise. Thor 207, my all-time favorite comic book. I bought these starting in the early 80s. Every time I saw a beautifully centered, high-grade copy. And it was easy to do so because they were so cheap. You know, I was picking these things up, you know, for $1 or $2 a piece. And because it is my all-time favorite comic book, well, I'm repeating myself now, but every time I would see a high-grade copy of it, beautifully centered, had to meet those 2 criteria, high-grade and beautifully centered, I would just pick them up. And before you knew it, back around, well, after I started eBay, because I bought a couple or a few copies of it from eBay too, in the early years of eBay, 2000 to 2003, 2004, something like that. At my peak, I think I had 24 copies of it, and obviously the majority I have sold or gifted over the years. That's fine. I think Nick, I think I gave you gifted two of my Thor 207s to you, the high graders. Hey man, yeah, and did you press them yet to make them even nicer? Yeah, speaking of gifting to Nick, I know I also gifted him a Koch Warehouse copy of Shadow number 1 too. And lastly, this book, this is the book I've had more copies of than any other book. Creatures on the Loose number 16. Look at that Gil Kane magnificence. It even eclipsed Thor 207, and I suppose it's just really the hand of fate, in that I searched them out in the very same way as Thor 207, but again, the hand of fate, I was able to find a few more copies. How many are here now? 4, 5, 6. Only 7. Good Lord. And that's down from, I don't know the exact number, but it was, I think, pushing 30 copies I had at one time overall. again, I've gifted and sold so many of them. But anyway, there you go. Excuse me. Mustache hair. I had to get rid of that. Anyway, thanks Nick and Patrick for the Neato tag, and I'm sorry I couldn't show you all 28 copies of Creatures on the Loose 16 and all 24 copies of Thor 207 and the dozen copies of the Koch Warehouse books and all that. But hey, we're about 15 or 20 years too late for all that. But anyway, I hope some more folks get in on this tag because I like this topic and I'm very interested to see what others might have out there. 10 or more copies in their collections. So thanks for watching. See y'all later. Bye-bye.